Hi, I'm Brandon Fertig of The Periphery. Today, August 1st, a 3D printed gun schematic was set to become freely available in most U.S. states. But just last night, a federal judge in Seattle ruled an injunction take place preventing the release of this data online. This is seen as a victory for Democrats and for those concerned with gun proliferation. This is the story you'll read in the papers. Now for the whole story, taken in part from my commentary in yesterday's Minneapolis Star-Tribune. The piece is about 3D printed guns, but it's also about how this one particular issue represents a whole slew of different issues dealing with technology and how government is struggling to keep up with the pace of technology today, and what this means for how we shape our societies moving forward. It starts back in 2013 with the advent of mainstream 3D printing technology. Texan Cody Wilson came up with a way to literally print a working firearm, if the necessary metal components were added. He made the schematic free on the internet. Within days, but after 100,000 downloads, the federal government ordered the plans taken offline. Their concern? We can't have everyone running around with a gun. We can't have people who aren't allowed to have guns by law print one off with a 3D printer, and what's more, the gun is untraceable because there's no serial number. This is something that we can't allow. So Wilson obeyed the government, but he did sue them for infringement of First and Second Amendment rights. We have the right to bear arms, and I certainly have the right to release information. Well, after a few years and back and forth and some setbacks, the State Department and Wilson did come up with an agreement, and in the settlement he basically won. He was allowed to print or to publish the schematic of his 3D printed gun, and he even won some cash too, which surprised a lot of people. So the agreement was set upon that on August 1st he would then be allowed, and that's what got the newspaper and the media started really writing about this. Like, wow, August 1st, this is going to be the day that it became sort of a doomsday to a lot of people who thought, boy, at midnight, by midnight, August 1st, if we don't have something preventing this from happening, then all hell's going to break loose, and we cannot let this happen. So there was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of pressure, and then the Seattle judge provided the injunction just last night. But the focus of this video and my commentary is that people are focusing too closely on the trees and they're missing the forest, to use a cliched phrase. This gun control issue, and actually this specific case of this schematic, is one tree in a clump of trees, which is gun control, within a forest, which is technology, and how technology is sprouting up in ways that the government can't contain. Yes, there was an injunction, but the bigger picture is that, one, you can't stop the flow of information, and two, this issue is just a sample of a larger concern. As I said, how technology is reducing the capability of government, and what this means for developed societies in general. If government can't contain the behavior of the members of their societies in ways that are civil, then how are we going to function moving forward? Now, this idea of technology challenging government isn't a new idea. It's been around for many years, most notably with the advent of the internet. And to just look at a few issues, we can look at gambling, the war on drugs, and prostitution. I wrote in that article, in the days of backroom card games, alleys to find a lady of the night, and CDs to burn, laws had more power because law enforcement officers had places to get the perpetrators or confiscate the goods. But now, such arrangements, if not the illicit activity itself, can all be done without ever leaving one's home. The same is said for campaign finance laws. Some campaigns today are taking cryptocurrencies. They're anonymous, at least some are anonymous, and so how are we to know when one person has reached their max of contributions? I believe they're trying to put in efforts to make it so this is trackable, but you know, again, you can see the writing on the wall. This is becoming very difficult to track, and I think becoming just unwieldy for governments and laws to try to restrain. Thirdly, how are we going to track immigration when we can teleport? Oh wait, haha, no, just kidding. It's not a concern. Yet. Now, government does have some teeth. around piracy. Say, for instance, when Napster came out in like 2000 or 99 or whenever that was, it was just a flood of piracy. Anyone could just get any song or movie or TV show that they wanted. And making those file sharing sites illegal, those above board ones, has curtailed a lot of that. It still goes on, but it's a lot less common. But despite any teeth that the government has, the point of this video is to share how the teeth are becoming dull. They're being filed down with every new technology that comes out. And despite the injunction or any legislation around these 3D printed guns, it's not going to do a whole heck of a lot of good because, as I write, in these days of rapid, vast, decentralized communication, the idea of policing information transference, whether financial, data, or just a conversation, is becoming impractical. As our lives migrate onto the internet, government as we know it, as a shaper of social activity, is showing its age. Compared with the pace at which such technology is advancing, governments just can't keep up. As such, and accelerating its declining importance, government as an institution has ceased attracting the best and the brightest among our population. Now, sometimes both of these factors are on display when government tries to address technological matters. In this particular matter with 3D printed guns, we see statements like this: "We need Congress to do the right thing and pass our bill to permanently block these blueprints from ever being published." This was a tweet by a senator. Now we've seen the same call or similar calls from politicians or financial talking heads when talking about Bitcoin, and I've seen on a financial show an expert saying we should outlaw Bitcoin. It seems the attitude of that financial talking head and that senator is that if we make it illegal, it'll magically just disappear. And I think that that's one, thinking about things in a way that doesn't align with the modern world and the replicable nature and the malleable nature of information and the internet. And it's also, I think, a throwback to the idea of the government being the default shaper of society. The government is who we deem responsible for curtailing negative activity, bad activity, harmful activity. There should be a law against that kind of thing. That's what people like to say. This injunction made a lot of people happy, but what happened afterward is typical, and it flies in the face of this thinking that the government can really do much about this. So I read an article this morning with the headline, "Gun Advocate Websites Publish Plans for Downloadable Guns After Judge Blocks Their Release." So right now, you go to these websites, which are, by the way, now getting free press, and you can go ahead and get your schematic. The injunction only did as much as it probably shrink some of the numbers of the people that downloaded the schematic, and that might be a victory in some people's eyes, but as far as keeping it out of the hands of people intent on getting it, it will have done nothing. Now, this reality that government just doesn't have the reach and the teeth that it used to have will alarm some people, because a weaker government means people with bad intentions can get away with bad actions. I also wrote in my article that it alarms others because our political systems are less able to shape society in ways that these people wish that they could. There are people that they like to control, they like to make things the way they think that they should be, and they think government is a convenient and handy way for us to shape the world, for themselves perhaps to shape the world. And then finally, for many people, this is just alarming in general because it presents a paradigm shift in the way we need to look at our society. Again, our default setting was that government is the mechanism by which we shape our society. And if that mechanism is broken, what do? Well, we do what we're being forced to do right now, at least in some areas, and I believe we are. As citizens, we're taking responsibility for doing our part to keep our communities safe and clean. right? We're getting out there more. We're donating to causes in need or just projects we enjoy. For instance, today, you and I can contribute to a movie that's being made or a book that's being written, whereas in the past that was only in the domain of the movie studios and the big publishing houses. Governments would get involved in the arts, but now you and I can contribute to the projects that we like. We can also do the same for nonprofits that we like. We don't need to rely on whether or not it gets funding from government or not. We've sidestepped, we've cut out that middleman, and now we're able to have direct access. So technology, on one hand, undercuts the power of government, but it also empowers us, and this is where we need to pick up the slack. And I think that the accumulation of our positive actions as citizens will do more to address persistent social ills than a law could. What's more, you have pioneers like Elon Musk and his company solving problems once thought the domain of the state. He's sending rockets into space, not NASA. And he's solving issues of public transportation with his Hyperloop technology in LA, and now he's consulting with Chicago. Even this one commercial I saw of Domino's Pizza, they're now filling potholes, and it's a great marketing and promotional tool, but it's also a way for them to just do something that used to always be done by the cities. The cities, of course, are going to continue to do their road work, but I just saw that was a funny representation of this phenomenon of the private sector, individuals, free people, just doing things spontaneously because it's the right thing to do, because it helps our world, and not relying on this entity of the state, of government, of law, from shaping us in that certain way. Now, we already know that government can't do all the things we wish it could. We've seen it fail at fixing social issues it's tried to address, like drug abuse, poverty, violence. In fact, in some of these areas, government has made them worse. So I believe that we can do better. Collectively, we can make a real difference. And this new era I wrote of technologically induced, de-emphasized government will require us to do so. How? Well, I think if we fund organizations locally in Minneapolis like Mad Dads to go out and work with the youth of the inner city, that we can do a lot to prevent the violence and the struggle in these communities, for example. Now, what can you do to reach out and help the drug epidemic, or to help addiction or addiction research? You know, maybe a technological solution will come along. So this is actually the last point I'm about to make. Technology isn't just an undercutter of the state and an enabler of us to connect with our communities more to help the world. Technologies themselves also solve problems that we usually have to rely on laws to address. So for instance, rather than debating legal limit to drink and drive, or how to handle the perpetrators of those who do drink and drive, how about instead we see how ride-sharing smartphone apps and self-driving cars can remedy this social ill? The same can be said about the prohibition of selling one's organs, selling one's body. I cannot sell a kidney. It's illegal for me to do that. Even though I have two and I can live with one, I can't sell one even if someone wants to pay me for it. Because the argument is that it would make poor people, it would exploit poor people, they'd be the only ones selling their kidneys, and it would only be rich people who would have the money to afford one. So they don't allow organ markets. But there have been prototype 3D printed organs, and we've seen ears growing on the back of rats. So if we can grow these organs in a lab, then the issue of the organ market becomes moot, because we have enough organs and we don't need to worry about selling one's own. And then another area this is the case is with lab-grown meat. If we can do that, then we won't have to worry about hunting and fishing regulation as we do today, because we can grow meat eventually cheaper outside of an animal, and then hunting and fishing will be for recreation and not for commercial. In theory. But I do think that these technological advances are having real-world applications and improvements. I think, again, with the drinking and driving and the mobile apps like Uber and Lyft, and then the self-driving cars eventually, we'll see drunk driving deaths plummet. I see that's going to be the future. So instead of having to write laws, in conclusion, and debate the morality to try to change our behavior, technologies will simply remove the need for debate altogether. This phenomenon, combined with a population more responsible for their communities and for each other, because they have to be, because technology is undercutting the power of the state of laws to shape us, all of this means I think the future looks pretty bright. Thank you for watching and for your support. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so to this channel. And in the spirit of how technology can connect one another and support things that we do, consider contributing to my Patreon, or you can email me with feedback or ideas for my channel. Both links are in the description below. On the Patreon page, you can see some upcoming projects I have that are real exciting, and I'd love to have you on board as a member.